And now night time, still krays after all these years.
'90 will be a big year for Reggie and Ronnie Kray. In April, the Krays movie is released, featuring Spandau Ballet's Martin and Gary Kemp as the twins. The Krays business managers intend to capitalize on the publicity it will generate to press for their release.
We have prints been painted by a guy called Paul Lake. These are prints from a master I've had done for myself. We're doing a limited edition of 2,000 of these.
Right.
They're on sale, signed for £150 each. They will be collector's items, obviously. We're hoping to raise the majority of our money for the campaign by the sale of these prints.
How much money do you expect the merchandising side to make in the next year?
I should think this year we've got a target figure of around about 150,000.
1990, will it be an important year?
It'll be a very important year for us, obviously, because of the film. The film will keep the Krays in the public eye. It will show their past, and we will show their future, and we hope that that will present an argument for them to be released.
In March 1969, when Ronnie and Reggie Kray were sent away for life, you might reasonably have thought, that's the last we'll hear of the Krays. The house where the twins lived here in Balance Road has gone. It's been replaced by these modern blocks. But even now, when they're two middle-aged men stuck behind bars, the Kray name can still carry enough clout to make the boys a fair income. Tonight, the London programme examines the Kray industry, and we show that even though the old firm died 21 years ago, a new Kray operation has risen to take its place. The Kray twins were born in Shoreditch and brought up in Bethnal Green. They lived at 178 Balance Road, part of an old row of terraced dwellings next to the railway line. They took up boxing from an early age, following in the footsteps of their elder brother Charlie. But according to him, this is where the trouble started.
It was a thing in the East End. It was like a Wild West type of thing. Billy the Kid, we'll get rid of Billy the Kid and I'll have a name. Well, that's what it was. If we can have the twins, beat the twins, then I'm going to have the name. And of course the twins kept winning. And as time went on, it got escalated so much. And I think that's what really the problem came from, because it went on and on as they got older. People kept on wanting to stop the twins, and they never did.
At the age of 18, they deserted national service and returned to Bethnal Green. Their favourite haunt was Polici's Cafe, just round the corner from Balance Road. One day, while resisting arrest for desertion, they assaulted a police constable. After a month in Wormwood Scrubs, the twins had arrived in the eyes of the criminal underworld. Within a few years, they had gathered around them a gang of friends known as the Firm.
It originated, as I say, in the billiard hall, I suppose, and then they got lots of friends around them. I mean, they never meant to set out to create a firm. It just happened that they were friends with them, and then as the twins got more clubs and more businesses, spills, etc., then they got people working for them. They collected money for them and different clubs. They worked in the clubs for them, I mean, on doors. And
in return for the cash, the Krays offered protection.
These protection rackets took the form of, say, a gang going into a club or a pub or other establishment and wrecking it. And then the Kray gang would approach the management and say, this can happen again, but we can protect you, and we will require what they called a pension weekly, which in those days might have been 10, 20, 30 pounds, which was an awful lot of money.
They also operated a very profitable activity called the long firm fraud. A legitimate company was set up and wholesalers invited to send goods on credit. False business references were supplied and the first couple of bills paid. But then they would order a large consignment, sell the stock at cut price and disappear without paying any of the debts. The profits of these activities earned the Krays a certain respect in the East End. This home movie, shot in the early 60s and shown for the first time on television, shows the Krays still living at Balance Road. It was recently found by a cousin of the Krays after gathering dust in a family attic for years. It shows that whether picnicking in Victoria Park or washing the car, keeping a low profile was the last thing on their mind. It was around this time that they moved in on West End clubs. And that's when a special police squad, led by Inspector Nipper Reed, was put onto the Cray case.
And I formed a little team of young detectives to try to see what we could do to find evidence to bring them to justice.
For years, the Krays stayed one step ahead.
George Cornell belonged to the other gang, and the suggestion was that at some time in a club in the West End of London, he had referred to Ronnie Kray as that fat puff. And so when it was learned that Cornell was in a pub called the Blind Beggars, Ronnie Kray with another man, walked in there at about 8:30 at night, and in fact, George Cornell was sitting with 3 other people at this end of the bar. Ronnie Kray came in from the street and walked down into the pub, and of course this caused no great consternation because Ronnie Kray was an East End man, people knew him, and in fact George Cornell greeted him by saying, "Look who's here." But they were the last words he spoke, because when he got to about 5 or 6 feet away from him, Ronnie Kray pulled out a German Mauser pistol and shot him right through the forehead.
The witnesses wouldn't speak. A year went by while the police methodically collected evidence of the murder. Then the Krays struck again.
Well, this is 97 Evening Road, which was the site of the murder of Jack McVitie. McVitie was what was known in the East End as a £2-a-week bandit. He was never a person who posed any real threat to the Krays, but it was decided that he should be murdered. He was brought from a club back there called the Regency Club into the basement of this house, and there first of all Reggie Kray pointed a gun at his head, and when it failed to go off, he took a kitchen knife and stabbed him in the throat and in the stomach a number of times until he was dead.
Nipper and his squad waited another 8 months before they had the evidence to swoop on the Krays.
And it was very important that all of the gang were arrested at once in order that they wouldn't interfere with potential witnesses. This is Braithwaite House, the flats where Ronnie and Reggie Kray lived with their mother, and at 6 o'clock on the 8th of May 1968, myself and other officers burst into the flat on the 9th floor and arrested them. They were both still in bed at that time, of course. It was quite early in the morning.
At the trial, the Krays were convicted for the murders of Cornell and McVitie and sentenced to life imprisonment.
Well, the murders was the work of cowards in a gang with a gun. McVitie was not shot because the gun was faulty and it didn't go off. But when you get a mob of jackals attacking a single individual like Jack the Hat McVitie, what chance does anybody stand? And in the case of Cornell, who was executed, shot dead in a pub by 2 men coming in with guns, what chance does society stand in front of a gun? It was cowardice and nothing else. They wanted to be kings of all they surveyed. They were kings of nothing. They were just princes of darkness. That's all they were. Cowards.
In giving them a minimum recommended sentence of 30 years, Judge Stevenson said, "Society deserves a rest from your activities." These were the highest minimum recommended sentences known at that time. What provoked the judge was the sheer effrontery, as he called it, of their actions. To walk into a pub, to kill a man in cold blood in front of witnesses, to embarrass the police, to cock a snook at the establishment, were acts of supreme arrogance. But these were the very acts that account for part of the fascination with the Krays. But that is only part of the story. Long before these murders, the Krays had gone to extraordinary lengths to build a legend around themselves.
I suppose they saw themselves as some sort of Al Capones of East London. I mean, I think they had, probably Al Capone may have been one of their heroes. I mean, they dressed the part of gangsters. They liked big cars. They liked putting their money about. They always had I mean, sometimes they'd come in here with 20 people with them, you know, and they did court publicity, you know, they were great self-publicists. In fact, if in a later age, maybe they'd have been like Saatchi and Saatchi, who knows, you know, instead of Kray and Kray, Saatchi and Saatchi, but...
At the ABC Cinema Mile End, they made film history by staging the East End's first royal premiere. The stars came thick and fast. Charlie Drake to begin with. They were all going to see that slice of East End life, Sparrows Can't Sing. Barbara Windsor stars in it.
The premiere of Sparrows Can't Sing in a local cinema was a golden opportunity. The Krays Kentucky Club in Bow Road had been used as a location for the film.
Lord Snowden was there. It was a fabulous night, and then when the film finished, everyone came back across the road to the club. We had a gala night there. Lord Snowden didn't come, he went off. But the rest of the people did, and it was fantastic. It created a lot of interest in the club, and obviously after that it was successful at the time, it became more successful because people knowing the film had been made that.
Ronnie did at one point have his own personal photographer who was always there on hand to snap Ronnie chatting, social occasion, anything, you know.
Had arrived in the world of showbiz. They crowned their success with 2 publicity coups. A spate of homosexual smear stories had been printed, appearing to link Ronnie and Lord Boothby. Injunctions and threats of libel came from all quarters, except Ronnie's. He actually offered a jubilant Daily Express the much sought-after pictures implicating him and the Lord. Naturally, they were published. They then appeared on TV after being acquitted of demanding money with menaces.
It's cost us roughly £8,000.
And how do you feel about that?
I don't suppose anyone likes the idea to spend that money for no reason at all, you know.
Does it leave you broke, or how does it leave you?
It doesn't leave us broke, but at the same time, it's a lot of money to have to pay out when money's innocent, you know.
A lot of people have got the impression from this trial that Clubland, London, is very tough. Do you think it is? You run a couple of clubs.
Well, in all clubs you get an occasional drunk, you know, and sometimes have to be slung out, and that's why there's doormen and that, but I suppose it's like Clubland all over the world, really. It's just the same as... I don't suppose it can be that bad, as people won't go to them, really, would they?
Ronald, what do you think about Clubland in London?
Well, I think most clubs are very respectable, you know, and I don't think there's any trouble at all in them, except occasionally.
Can you tell me why, during the trial, you didn't give evidence?
Well, we was advised by legal people not to give evidence.
At the same time as they were mixing with the stars, the Krays were ostentatiously generous in their own community. Flanagan's known the twins since she was a teenage hairdresser to their mother. She later became the first page 3 model and remembers their generosity.
Especially to the poor people in the East End, the Christmas hampers. I mean, I know all about that because I've seen them in Mrs. Kray's house. A priest used to come and collect those. Hetherington, Father Hetherington of Bethnal Green, used to come and collect those on Christmas Eve evening and distribute those to the poor. That contained chickens and Christmas puddings and little bottles of brandy. All charity nights were put on at the Boxing Doos.
The twins made sure the cameras were never far away when they gave to charity. One edition ran a tribute to the twins' generosity, calling Ronnie a local businessman.
Even when they were arrested in '68, I mean, they decided to ask for publicity in the lower court hearing so that they could tell the world how they were being fitted up, you know, and they were handing out press releases from inside Brixton Jail. You know, they loved, they were part of the showbiz life in many ways, the Krays, in their heyday.
Showbiz stars and philanthropists they may have been, but there was another side to the Kray equation.
Well, they could be a bit nasty. It depends. I mean, I know a person that he was involved. There was somebody involved in a row, and there was a bloke. He was only an ordinary person, but he put it about that he was going to make one. When they say make one, it means he's going to be on the other side against the twins. And he was in a pub in Bow, and somebody went up to him and said, "Reggie wants to see you round the other side, round the public bar." And he was only an ordinary bloke, and he went round and said, "Do you want to see me, Reg?" And Reg slapped him round the face and said, "Now look," Jammy his name was, he said, "Look, Jammy, just keep your mouth shut." And the man moved to Maidstone.
If a journalist actually went too far, then some of them were threatened physically. These threats, in fact, could have been carried out. Fortunately, they never were. But journalists at that time, including myself, kept well away from them, really.
The Krays inspired this fear until the bitter end.
Right from day one, the tension inside that court was electrifying. I mean, it was quite frightening physically to be so close to them. On the press bench in that particular court, you're literally only an arm away from the dock. And I remember vividly sitting in that dock, and I was on my own because most of the press boys had gone out to file copy, and I just happened to be sitting there at a particularly dull part of the proceedings. And I remember looking up and seeing Ronnie staring at me, just staring. I mean, it was really frightening. He just stood for a minute, 2 minutes, and I knew he was staring at me.
Well, it was something that was very difficult to appreciate until and unless you saw the way it acted upon people and upon people's minds. People that had been the victims of this fear for a number of years were just physically wrecked and ruined. They were financially ruined, and it was very, very difficult to persuade people to give evidence against some organisation that had exerted this fear for such a long time.
Professor Laurie Taylor taught sociology to members of the Kray firm in Durham Prison. He later made a study of their underworld.
And the interesting thing was that as I talked to other people who had been gangsters or who knew the Krays, was that they said that the Krays began to differ slowly. In that, if you like, underworld, there is a tariff, there is a recognition. Okay, somebody stepped out of line, this was out of order, that had to be done to them. But what seemed to be happening with the Krays was that the punishment that was handed out was out of all proportion to the offence. Or the thing that inspired, if you like, much more fear than was necessary, was that they were unpredictable.
For over a decade, the Krays ruled in East London. These days, you won't hear any talk about protection rackets, frauds, murders. The firm is dead. One of the few reminders of their reign is Polici's Cafe, still just the same as it was in the days when the Krays used to hold court over breakfast. But even though they're gone, the twins still continue to hold a peculiar fascination for many Londoners. It's as though they still have a presence in the East End. And in some ways, they do.
The twins were at the church ahead of them. Ronnie was first, now classified as criminally insane.
Since they were put away, the Krays have never ceased to catch the public eye.
Then came Reggie, also handcuffed from the maximum security wing at Parkhurst, where a few months ago he tried to kill himself. It was said that
when they attended their mother's funeral in 1982, they were greeted by hundreds of onlookers and an extraordinary media circus.
At the end of the short service, the twins were taken back to their cells without having seen their mother buried.
And even from inside maximum security establishments, Reggie and Ronnie continue to grab the limelight. No longer able to hold court in the East End, the twins now entertain in prison relatives, friends, and pop stars. Some come to see them on friendly visits, others to hatch business deals. And they fed journalists almost every conceivable detail of their lives in prison.
Well, you can see it. I mean, all you have to do is come into a newspaper library and there's a huge fat file of this stuff. I mean, you have Reggie, a day in the life of Reggie Kray, you know, what he does, what he eats, who he talks to, what films he sees, minute-by-minute report. This one of pictures taken inside Lewis Jail. I mean, this man's in custody. He's being held in a prison, and yet these are professional photographs taken of him, building up his biceps and all the rest of it, freely available to the Sunday Mirror. Recently, they produced a book, Our Way. You know, we did it our way, and telling the story in quite graphic detail of what they got up to. And the world exclusive, yes, I killed Jock McVitie. I denied it at the trial, and I wished ever since that I hadn't. You see, I'm not ashamed of having killed him. I don't believe I had a choice. And the most recent one was a press release on a very fancy notepaper. It dropped through the post one day announcing that Ronnie was going to marry his girlfriend Katie, and which surprised us all, you know, because we all know that Ronnie's sexual preferences are for men, and this was his second marriage inside Broadmoor. In this case, it was a straightforward deal they were offering, £25,000 for the full rights, pictures, pictures of the party, the wedding, quotes from the two brothers, and a general wrap-up of the whole thing, £25,000. That was the opening bid. I mean, there's a big-scale publicity machine that's making an awful lot of money on the notoriety of the Krays, and it's been done quite openly.
To discover what lay behind all this recent publicity, we approached those closest to the Kray twins. We joined Ronnie's wife, Kate, on one of her twice-weekly trips to Broadmoor to visit her husband.
What made you decide that you did want to marry him?
Oh, because I fell in love with him. Slowly. So it grew, and he's got the most wickedest smile you've ever seen.
Well, I suppose a lot of people would say he's got reason to have a wicked smile,
Not wicked, meany wicked. I mean, wicked, sexy smile. It's just, it lights up his face. It's like someone turning on a light when you walk into a room. It just lights up on his face.
The fact is, Ronnie has said that he is a homosexual. Now, why would you marry somebody who was so publicly gay?
Well, he's not gay. He doesn't sort of, you see Ronnie, you wouldn't think he was gay for a start. But he's not gay, he's bisexual.
How do you know that?
Because he told me. He's really sort of forthright and stuff. But when I first met him, on the first visit, I think it was, he said to me, I'm not homosexual, I'm bisexual. And that's okay, doesn't matter.
Doesn't worry you at all.
1990, you know.
Presumably you marry him in the hope that one day he'll get out.
Yeah, but I love Ronnie. At the end of the day, there's more to a marriage than just sex. I was married for 13 years before, and it's a lot to do with, you know, friendship. Ronnie's my best friend. He's just so lovely. He's friendship, companionship. You feed from each other. You know, one's happier. There's so much more than just sex. All right, it's sex. You know, we will get around to the sex bit, but that's not yet. And when that comes, then we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. But believe me, I know there's no problem.
Can you tell me honestly that you really sought no publicity from the wedding? You sought to take no advantage from the fact you were marrying Ronnie Kay?
No. I would have got married quietly, just slipped into Broadmoor and slipped out if I'd had my way, without a doubt. It's not fun having people sort of, you know, camping on your doorstep and sort of chasing you and taking photographs. It's not, you know, it's not very nice.
It might be a price worth paying if you were going to get your hands on some of Ronnie Kray's money.
Ronnie Kray's
or the money that's generated by Ronnie Kray's name.
Yeah. I've got my own money. I don't need Ronnie's money.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, when they say in newspapers that you're basically just a little hussy who's just after his money, there's no truth in that. You would deny that absolutely.
Yeah, without a doubt, yeah. I've got my own property, I've got things of my own before I even met Ron.
Kate points to her frequent visits to Broadmoor as proof of her devotion. But whether or not the wedding was a publicity stunt, it aroused a great deal of interest and got plenty of coverage. We then approached Reggie Kray's closest associates, Pete Gillette and Nicky Treby.
Presentation to those people in Leicester. Someone killed two birds with one stone, otherwise we're going to remain.
Pete is a former jailmate from Parkhurst.
Unnecessary.
Theatre company.
Nick, a financial consultant and specialist in offshore companies, was appointed 18 months ago by Reggie to manage his business affairs. They formed a company called Progress Management.
Over to Leicester.
What is really the objective of this company? Is it simply to make money, to keep the Kray's name before the public, or what?
It's basically to keep the Kray name in the public eye and to keep the campaign alive. It's the only way we can really do it.
To campaign to free them?
To campaign to free them, yeah. I mean, they are involved in many things, charity events, etc. And the company is there to organise that, obviously, because Reg can't. So that's why we do it for him.
All right, this is the stores where we keep everything.
This is all the merchandise here.
Yeah.
So, what have we got here?
Well, the first idea we had, really, for merchandise, were signed copies of the book. We've had the twins make a lot of signatures on some plastic little stickers,
sticky labels,
so that we can insert them into the book. We sell these for £10 plus a £1 postal and package. Where in the shops they're £12.95 unsigned, so they become a collector's piece. There's only 2,000 of them. And we also have, of course, the print, which is we hope to be the main money spinner. This is the copy of the Paul Lake painting of Reg and Ron. We get these signed up in the same way with the sort of stickers that we take into the twins, and they sign them up. Also, Paul Lake signs it up, and we sell them out at £150. There's a limited edition of 2,000, which will obviously help finance, hopefully in a big way, our freedom campaign. We've also got the Enough is Enough Reggie Cray t-shirts. This is like Reg on the telephone, enough is enough, it says on the front, if you can quite see that.
Right.
And then on the back we've got When Will Someone Listen? I began to notice little things were not the same.
Pete Gillette's own contribution to the campaign is releasing an album written with Reggie. Whilst in prison for conspiracy to rob, Pete became like an adopted son to Reggie. They've corresponded daily since Pete's release.
Reg wrote me a letter one day, and at the beginning of it he said, I began to notice that little things about your attitude had changed and stuff like this. And so I just added on a little melody line to it, and up we come with a song. But basically, Reg wrote it as a little bit of a go at me.
Now, how much money do you expect the merchandising side to make in the next year?
I should think this year we've got a target figure of around about 150,000.
150,000 you think it would make? Where does most of that money go?
Well, 75% of it will go towards sponsoring events. The other 25% goes towards the running expenses of what you've seen.
That's presumably paying you and
me
Pete.
And Peter, and you know, all the expenses that we have. Yeah.
Some of the money is being invested for the twins' future. This 17th century 6-bedroom country manor in Suffolk is worth £500,000.
Well, we're discussing a home at the moment. There's one that we're looking at. We don't know what's going to come of it, but there is one that we are interested in for them.
Handed that punch, turn to him and hold him, but you must pull the punch back and put it in.
In April, exposure will reach saturation point with the release of the first feature film about the Krays.
Okay, punch. Body.
How much did they make out of it?
They were given 80,000 for the story, to be able to use the story, and that's gone to charity that we've been involved with. They get a lot of letters, obviously, for charity. This is an example. This is about a month's worth, all of that lot.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Right, here's a letter from Wolverhampton. This is somebody they've given money to, is it?
Yeah, that's from...
James?
Yes, that's right. That's James Fallon. That's about the computer that we gave him.
Who is James Fallon?
James Fallon is the South African boy who was knocked over by a hit-and-run driver. And because he's in South Africa, there were no charities in this country really could get involved. But the twins saw the photographs of the boy and decided to get involved with him.
What do you say to the accusation that what you and the Kray twins are doing is making money out of their many extremely evil deeds?
We don't use the past. Somebody would do this business anyway. There are always people who want to make money out of crime. What we're doing is we're taking that money and we're doing good with it. We're doing good in as much as that we give it to charity, and that it also keeps the Kray name alive for the good of what they're doing now, not for what they've done in the past.
Just as in their heyday, the Krays have glamour, they're making money, and they're giving generously to charity. But there's another, less attractive side to the Kray legend that still survives. It's that some people around here are still terrified of the twins. One of those closely involved with the Krays in the 60s was a man called Billy Webb. 20 years later, Billy Webb visited Ronnie Kray in Broadmoor and punched him in the face. The press reported the incident as a culmination of a gangland vendetta, but Billy Webb saw it, quite simply, as a revenge attack. He claimed his brother, who had died recently, never fully recovered from a fight he'd had with the Krays. We went to see Billy Webb, and our researcher asked him what had actually happened between him and the Krays 20 years ago.
I'd like to ask you what you think of the Kray twins.
What I think?
Well, how do you feel about the Kray twins, given the fact that they've had some influence in your past?
How do I feel? I don't know. I'm not with you. How do I feel?
Well, what's your opinion of the Kray twins?
I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get involved.
Is there any reason why you don't want to get involved?
I prefer not to get involved.
Is there any reason why you would prefer to keep out of it?
We'll just let sleeping dogs lie. All right?
Could I ask you, how do you feel about the prospect of the Krays' release?
It's not in my hands, is it? It's in the judge's hands. It's just 30 years.
Can you tell us a bit about when you first met the Krays?
No, I don't want to go into nothing.
Do you fear the Krays coming out?
Do I?
Do you fear the Krays coming out?
No, not personally, no. I don't want to make no waves, can't you understand?
In the course of making this programme, we approached several witnesses to the Krays' grip on East London, but many of them refused to talk. I want to forget the past. I don't want to think about the Krays. I want £10,000 to talk to you, and then I'll leave the country. I don't want my house burnt down. People around here don't know I was involved with the Krays. I prefer to keep it that way. One ex-gangland member who refused to appear on the programme wrote this letter.
Whilst the Krays are inside, people like me who have crossed swords with them are reasonably safe. But in the event of Reg Kray's release, people like me will be killed and disappear.
You could say that the fact that the Krays are still somehow in the public eye might give some people an idea that they are emerging somehow unscathed from their imprisonment, that they're about to take off where they left off. But I think the Krays have moved wholly into the area of entertainment. They're now out of the area of crime. And I think it is really that any fear that people have at the moment is based upon just seeing their face everywhere in the papers and somehow assuming that the ubiquity of their image indicates some capacity on their part to be able to behave in the way in which they did in the past towards their enemies.
The Krays now claim that they've turned their backs on the past. They won't be coming back down here to claim their old manor. They say they've served 22 years in prison and now all they want is a quiet life. Later on this year, their supporters will be launching an all-out campaign for an early release. But will the public image they've so carefully created work against them?
It will take a brave government to release them, there's no doubt about that. But then, after 22 years, and the fact that they've done as much good as they have, and the fact that they've been model role prisoners, they've never been in trouble whilst they've been in prison, I think it only highlights the case. I don't think they're going to do it unless we highlight the case. We've got to keep pushing, and we've got to keep them in the public eye.
Kate Kray says that Ronnie, a paranoid schizophrenic, is now fully rehabilitated.
He's a sick man, though, isn't he?
Yeah, but that's all controlled by drugs. He's got an illness, but as long as he takes his drugs and his medicine, he's fine. And the public don't know the sort of things they do in prison, and Ronnie and Broadmoor. They like youngsters that are got into trouble with something silly and they've got a prison sentence. You know, they think, oh, that's Reggie Kray or Ronnie Kray, and they respect them, they look up to them, and want to say to them, you know, don't do it, look what happened to me, don't be silly. And they spin people around in prison. The society could sort of gain so much back from them, instead of just leaving them to rot in prison.
Reg is actually quite a sensitive guy, you know. He's not the big, fearsome hood that he's made out to be. He's quite a big softy, really. Well, he is where I'm concerned, and people that are close to him, and you know, you've only got to sort of see the charity work he does and the things he gets involved. He's adopted this young kid called James Fallon out in South Africa.
I think it was seen as just 20 years ago. It was a clear attempt to stop gangland crime and was meant to be an exemplary sentence. I think today it wouldn't be seen in the same light at all. We have many more serious cases of murder, people like Nielsen, Sutcliffe, the IRA bombings, and the kind of common or garden crime, which is in fact what the Krays was, is treated much less severely in terms of the minimum periods that people serve. So he would probably have got something like 20 years today, if he'd got a recommendation at all.
Although Dennis Nielsen, who killed 15 men, got 25 years and some IRA bombers get even less, Ashman doubts the Home Office will reduce the Krays' sentences.
It's very unusual for anyone to be let out under the minimum period. Only 7 cases in the last 25 years since the sentence has been introduced, the mandatory life sentence. And so he'll serve all of that.
This puts the Krays in a difficult dilemma.
Well, they obviously want to ensure that their name is kept before the public and the minister, and that they're not left to rot in prison, which is a real danger in their situation. But the problem is, the more they appear in films and books and on television, the harder it is for the minister to release them, because he's faced with the dilemma of the Law and Order Brigade saying that he is soft on crime and that criminals are profiting from their crimes.
Do you think it is wise to give the Krays such a high profile?
It's the only way we can really do it. Basically, we will carry on with the campaign until we've got 50,000 signatures. Once we've got the 50,000, we will serve those on Downing Street, and hopefully that will be in time for the parole board hearing for Reg, which is coming up shortly. And we hope that it will make the government aware of the fact that there are a lot of people who would like to see him released.
They might be putting an early review at risk, but it's unlikely the twins and their firm will give up the operation that has turned murderers into legends.
I suppose you could say, when you look back upon all the ways in which the Krays attempted to bring themselves to public attention, all the famous people they got themselves photographed with towards the end of their career, I suppose you could say that really, now that they are the subject of a major feature film, now they've got their own phone line, they have got what they've always wanted. They are, in fact, popular heroes.